You failed this company, Natalie. The conference room went dead silent the moment Victor Langford slammed the contract file onto the long glass table. My name echoed in the air like a curse. 12 executives sat frozen in their leather chairs, watching me with cold, careful faces. None of them met my eyes. This is Revenge Room. If this is the first time you are seeing our video, kindly like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. I gripped the edge of my chair, trying to keep my breathing steady. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. You ignored the client's deadlines, Victor continued, his voice rising. You destroyed a $15 million partnership. This is entirely your fault, Natalie. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the conference room door swung open. 2 HR officers walked in carrying a brown folder and termination papers. My stomach dropped to the floor. This can't be happening, I whispered. But it was happening. After 6 years of loyalty, sleepless nights, and missed birthdays, I was being publicly destroyed in front of everyone I had worked beside. As security led me toward the elevator, my coworker Mia brushed past me quickly. Her lips barely moved. Check your personal inbox. Right now. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my front door. The afternoon sun poured through my apartment windows, but I felt frozen inside. I dropped my purse and ran straight to my laptop on the kitchen table. I opened my personal email with trembling fingers. At the top of my inbox sat a strange message from an anonymous sender. The subject line was blank. My breath caught in my throat as I clicked it open. The email contained a long forwarded chain. Most of the messages had been partially deleted, leaving only fragments behind. Pieces of conversations. Half-finished sentences. Names blurred or cut off completely. But one full sentence remained perfectly visible in the middle of the chain. Make sure Natalie takes the fall for this. I read it 3 times. My vision blurred. The kitchen suddenly felt like it was tilting sideways. Someone had planned this. Someone had decided, weeks ago, that I would be the one destroyed. I scrolled to the very top of the original email chain to find the sender. My eyes locked onto the address. It belonged to Brenda Holloway, Victor's executive assistant. The woman who smiled at me every morning while bringing him coffee. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen until the words began to blur together. Suddenly, every strange thing from the past few weeks made horrible sense. 3 weeks ago, Victor had quietly removed me from a key strategy meeting, claiming the room was full. The next week, he excluded me from a client call I had personally organized. Then he stopped forwarding me project updates altogether. Every time I raised concerns about the impossible deadlines on the Halverson contract, Victor brushed me off with the same tired phrase. Just trust the process, Natalie. I had trusted the process. I had trusted him. And the entire time, he had been carefully cutting me out of every important conversation. He wasn't ignoring me. He was isolating me. I logged into the company server through my old remote access, hoping it still worked. The system loaded slowly. When I searched for my email folder from the past 2 months, my chest tightened. Entire threads were missing. Conversations I had personally written had vanished from the records. Months of evidence about the failing contract were simply gone, as if they never existed in the first place. Someone had cleaned the server, panic clawed at my chest. I pulled out my phone and started calling former coworkers I trusted. The first call rang out. The second went straight to voicemail. The third was answered, then immediately hung up. By the 5th call, I understood. Word had spread fast. Nobody wanted to be associated with me. I tried logging into my work accounts. Every single one had been wiped clean. Shared project folders gone. Internal messaging deleted. Even my employee profile photo had been removed from the company directory like I had never existed. Then my phone buzzed nonstop with LinkedIn notifications. My fingers trembled as I opened the app. Victor had already posted a public statement on the company page. Natalie Brooks has been terminated following severe project negligence. We thank our partners for their continued trust during this transition. Hundreds of comments flooded the post within minutes. Strangers I had never met called me reckless and incompetent. My professional reputation was being burned alive in real time, and I was helpless to stop it. Just before midnight, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. A familiar voice spoke quietly. "Natalie, we need to talk." It was Marcus Halverson, the executive from the client company. The very man Victor had blamed me for losing. My hand trembled as I pressed the phone harder against my ear. "I just heard you were fired today," Marcus said gently. "I need you to know something." Everyone on my team was shocked. "You were the only competent person on that entire project." Tears immediately filled my eyes. I had to sit down on the kitchen floor, my back against the cold cabinet. "Then why did the contract collapse?" I whispered. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried something heavier than anger. It carried guilt. 2 weeks ago, Victor told us not to communicate with you anymore. He said you were being pulled off the project for personal reasons. We thought it was strange, but we trusted him. The truth hit me like a wave of icy water. Victor had cut off my direct line to the client without anyone knowing. "Natalie, listen carefully," Marcus continued. "There's something else. Last week, Victor accidentally copied me on an internal email. I think he meant to send it to someone else." My heart pounded violently. "I'm forwarding it to you right now." The email arrived seconds later. The subject line read "Final adjustments, internal only." My fingers hovered over the trackpad before I clicked. A spreadsheet loaded across my screen. Rows and rows of financial figures filled the document. Project timelines. Delivery schedules. Vendor payments. All carefully detailed and signed off. But none of the numbers matched what I knew to be true. The deadlines listed were weeks ahead of the actual project pace. The deliverables marked complete had never been completed. Vendor invoices had been inflated by huge amounts. Every adjustment had been approved through Victor's executive account. Then I saw it. My own digital signature appeared at the bottom of the spreadsheet, approving every single fraudulent number. I had never seen this document in my life. I stared at the timestamp beside my forged signature. It read 2:47 in the morning, on a Tuesday I remembered clearly. I had been asleep at home that entire night, recovering from the flu. Someone had used my login credentials to fake my approval. Someone had carefully made it look like I had personally signed off on financial fraud. The room spun around me. This wasn't just unfair termination anymore. This was something far more dangerous. By morning, the damage had spread beyond anything I could control. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with rejection emails from recruiters who had previously been excited to meet me. Every conversation suddenly cooled overnight. Industry forums online were exploding with comments about the failed contract. Strangers wrote long posts dissecting my supposed mistakes. Former coworkers I once shared lunches with quietly removed me from professional networking groups, one by one. Victor wasn't satisfied with simply firing me. He wanted to make sure I would never work in this industry again. He was systematically destroying my future. Around noon, a courier knocked on my door with a thick envelope. My hand shook as I signed for it. The paperwork inside carried the cold weight of a corporate law firm. It was a legal warning letter. The company was preparing to sue me for damages caused by the failed Halverson contract. They were demanding $3 million in compensation for losses. I sank onto my couch, unable to breathe properly. They had fired me, ruined my reputation, and now they wanted to bankrupt me too. Every door was being slammed shut at the same time, with surgical precision. But somewhere beneath the panic, a small fire began burning inside me. That night, I sat alone on my living room floor surrounded by old printed documents I had saved at home. For the first time in 2 days, I let myself cry. 6 years of loyalty had been reduced to public humiliation in a single afternoon. I cried until my chest ached. Then I dried my face, opened my laptop, and began reviewing every old report I still had access to. Hours passed. I made coffee at midnight, then again at 3 in the morning. Slowly, patterns began emerging from the chaos. Victor had bypassed standard compliance procedures repeatedly during the Halvorson contract. Approvals that normally required 3 signatures had only carried his. Vendor selections that should have gone through review boards had been pushed straight through. Risk assessments had been skipped entirely. This wasn't ordinary corporate carelessness. This was deliberate. He had cut corners on purpose, in a very specific pattern. Almost like he was hiding something underneath the failure itself. That wasn't incompetence I was looking at. That was desperation. At 4:30 in the morning, my phone buzzed quietly on the table. It was a text from Mia, my old coworker. Meet me tomorrow at the small cafe on Ridgeway Street. 2 o'clock. Come alone. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Mia was already sitting at a corner booth, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee. She kept glancing at the door like she expected someone to walk in any second. I shouldn't be here, she whispered as I sat down across from her. If anyone finds out, I'll be next. I nodded slowly, my own pulse racing. What did you find, Mia? She took a shaky breath. After they fired you, Victor went straight to the IT department. He told them to permanently delete specific email chains from the company server. Anything with your name attached to risk warnings. Anything that mentioned the Halvorson timelines. He wanted it all gone before legal could review. My stomach tightened painfully. But one of the junior IT technicians, a young guy named Devin, he secretly made backup copies before running the deletion command. He told me he had a bad feeling about the whole thing. Mia reached into her purse and slid a small flash drive across the wooden table. Her fingers were trembling. There's something on there Victor never wanted anyone to see, Natalie. Something much worse than just deleted emails. You need to be careful with this. I drove straight home and locked every door behind me. My laptop felt heavier than usual as I plugged in the flash drive. The screen flickered, then loaded a folder containing hundreds of recovered emails. I opened the first thread. Then the second. Then the 10th. Every warning I had ever sent Victor was there. Every risk report I had submitted about the Halvorson contract. Every recommendation I had made about adjusting the impossible deadlines. He had received them all and ignored every single one. But there were also messages I had never seen before. Internal conversations between Victor and other senior executives. Strategy discussions about the failing project. Plans I had never been included in. Then I opened one email that made my entire body go cold. It was sent 6 weeks before my termination. Victor had written it himself, addressing several people inside the company. If this contract collapses, we pin it on Natalie immediately. She's been involved enough to look responsible, but disposable enough to remove cleanly. Prepare the documentation now. My hands locked up over the keyboard. I scrolled to the top of the message to see who had been copied. The CEO's email address was right there. I stared at the CEO's name until my eyes burned. The most powerful man in the company had known about this plan from the very beginning. He had received Victor's email weeks before my termination and had said nothing to stop it. This wasn't just one corrupt manager. This went all the way to the top of the building. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing through every detail. Upper management had known the Halvorson contract was failing long before the public collapse. They had needed someone expendable to absorb the blame before shareholders started asking dangerous questions. I wasn't randomly selected for punishment. I had been carefully chosen. The middle management woman with no political allies. The loyal employee who kept her head down and worked hard. The one whose firing wouldn't shake the corporate boat too much. The one who could be discredited quickly and cleanly. I was the perfect scapegoat. Then I noticed something else in the recovered files. A separate financial document from Human Resources. 3 weeks before the contract collapsed, Victor had received a massive performance bonus of nearly $400,000. A bonus, while the project was already actively failing. A bonus, paid out before any consequences had landed. That number didn't make any sense at all. Unless the bonus wasn't really for performance. I dug deeper through the recovered files for the next 3 hours. The kitchen lights buzzed quietly above me as morning slowly approached. Then I found the connection that broke the entire story open. Inside the financial records was a list of vendors approved for the Halverson contract. One name appeared repeatedly across multiple inflated invoices. A company called Pinegate Solutions. I researched the company quickly. Pinegate Solutions was registered under a man named Howard Langford. The last name immediately made my skin crawl. Howard was Victor's brother-in-law. Victor had personally approved more than $2 million in payments to a vendor owned by his own family member. The invoices were padded with fake services that had never been delivered. The money had been quietly funneled into a shell company while the project was crumbling. The failed Halverson contract wasn't just about poor management or missed deadlines. It was financial fraud. Real, prosecutable fraud, hidden behind a wall of lies and a sacrificial scapegoat. I quickly contacted a corporate attorney named Diane Westbrook, whose name had been recommended by an old college friend years earlier. I sent her a brief but careful summary of what I had discovered. She replied within 20 minutes. "Don't talk to anyone else. Come to my office tomorrow morning." Diane Westbrook's office was small but sharp, lined with thick legal books and framed certificates. She listened to my entire story without interrupting once. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. "Natalie, what you have here is enormous. But you cannot rush this. We have to build everything carefully, piece by piece, before we move publicly." She advised me to keep my head down for now, while she quietly began verifying the recovered evidence with forensic experts. In the meantime, I needed to survive financially without raising any suspicion. So I started taking on small freelance consulting projects. I worked from my dining room table, designing reports and reviewing systems for small businesses around the city. The pay was modest but steady. Slowly, something unexpected happened. Old contacts in the industry began reaching out privately. People who had worked with me for years simply didn't believe Victor's version of events. One former client, a woman named Priya Anand, hired me to overhaul her company's vendor management system. Then another reached out. Then another. Victor believed I was broken, jobless, and humiliated. He believed I was hiding in shame somewhere, watching my career die. But quietly, slowly, I was already rebuilding. And he had no idea. Then a new email arrived from a senior executive at a competing firm. While I worked quietly in the shadows, Victor's career soared upward. The company promoted him to senior vice president for successfully managing the Halverson crisis. His face appeared in industry magazines. He posted long, arrogant speeches across social media about leadership during difficult times. I watched it all silently from my apartment, taking detailed notes on everything he said publicly. Diane warned me to stay patient. Every public lie he told would become evidence later. Then I noticed something dangerous starting to happen. Victor was assigned to lead a brand new project, a major contract with a healthcare company called Brightwell Medical. Within 2 weeks, the warning signs began appearing. Coworkers I still spoke with mentioned strange financial decisions. Inflated vendor invoices. Skipped compliance reviews. He was repeating the exact same risky behavior on another massive contract. He hadn't learned anything from the Halverson disaster because the disaster had worked perfectly for him the first time. Then my phone began buzzing with new messages. Former coworkers I hadn't heard from in months were suddenly reaching out. Some apologized for ghosting me. Others wanted to share information. A junior analyst named Theo wrote me a long, careful email at midnight. "Natalie, I think Victor is going to do it again. And this time, the next person he picks won't have the strength you do. 3 former coworkers agreed to meet me at Diane's office that following week. They sat nervously on the leather couch in her conference room, taking turns telling their stories. The first man, Theo, described how Victor had pressured him to alter project reports last year. The second, an older woman named Camille, talked about how Victor had bullied her into staying silent after she discovered missing money in a previous account. Then came Janelle. She had only been at the company for 2 years, but she had been quietly watching Victor very carefully the entire time. "I started saving screenshots 6 months ago," Janelle said, opening her laptop. "Every suspicious email. Every weird approval. I knew, somehow, that one day he would destroy someone else the way he destroyed people before. I didn't want to be unprepared when it happened." She turned the screen toward us. Folder after folder of organized evidence appeared. Time-stamped messages. Financial reports. Internal meeting notes. Diane's eyes widened slowly as she scrolled through everything. She looked up at me from across the conference table. "Natalie, this isn't just about one corrupt manager anymore. This is about exposing an entire pattern that the company has been protecting for years." I now had enough evidence to bring down Victor's entire department. A week later, an unexpected email arrived in my personal inbox at 11 in the morning. The sender was a reporter named Camden Ross from the Atlantic Business Review. He was an investigative journalist with a serious reputation for breaking corporate fraud stories. He wrote that he had been hearing whispers about strange financial behavior inside my old company. Anonymous tips had been arriving in his inbox for weeks. He had heard my name mentioned several times. I hesitated for 2 full days before responding. My career, my safety, and my legal case were all at risk if I moved too soon. I called Diane immediately. She listened carefully, then nodded. "He's clean. I've worked with him before on a different fraud case. You can trust him, but only with careful information." I agreed to a phone call. Camden's voice was calm and professional. He listened patiently as I shared the basic outline of my story without revealing the most sensitive details yet. Then he said something that stopped my heart. "Natalie, I need you to know something important. You're not the only whistleblower I've been talking to. There are at least 4 other current and former employees feeding me information." He paused before adding the next part. "And I already have leaked internal documents to verify everything." 2 days later, Camden sent me an encrypted file. The subject line read "Listen alone. Headphones recommended." My pulse quickened as I downloaded the audio. It was a leaked recording from a private executive meeting that had happened 3 weeks before my termination. Victor's voice came through clearly, surrounded by the murmur of other senior leaders. "The Halverson situation is going to crash hard," Victor said calmly. "We need to control the narrative now. I've already picked the person." Another voice, deeper and older, asked, "Who?" "Natalie Brooks. She's emotional enough to crack under public pressure. She doesn't have strong allies in upper management. She's perfect to blame. Trust me, by the time anyone questions it, the story will already be set." Then Victor laughed. He actually laughed, while planning to destroy 6 years of my career. I took off my headphones with shaking hands. The cruelty hit me harder than the firing itself. He hadn't just fired me carelessly. He had studied me. He had used my own personality against me as a weapon. Something cold and final settled deep inside my chest. I had spent weeks staying quiet, building evidence, and protecting myself. That was over now. I called Diane and Camden together. "I'm done staying quiet. Publish it." 3 days later, Camden's article hit the front page of the Atlantic Business Review. The headline ran across the screen in bold black letters. "Major tech firm accused of internal fraud and evidence destruction." The article was carefully written. Camden didn't reveal my full name yet, but he detailed the missing emails, the forged digital signatures, the suspicious vendor payments to Pinegate Solutions, and the pattern of executive misconduct. He included quotes from anonymous insiders who confirmed everything. The internet exploded within hours. The article was shared thousands of times before lunch. Industry professionals who had quietly suspected something for years finally had public proof. Comment sections filled with people demanding accountability. By the end of the day, the company's stock had dropped 7%. By the next morning, it had dropped 15%. Investors were panicking. Board members were going silent. Phone lines at the company headquarters were jammed with calls from worried shareholders. Victor's social media accounts went dark suddenly. His arrogant leadership posts were deleted overnight without explanation. People started questioning him publicly across professional networks. That afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. My fingers froze above the screen as I recognized the area code. It was Victor. He was calling me directly. I almost didn't answer. My hand hovered over the phone for 5 long rings before I finally pressed the green button. I didn't say hello. I didn't say anything at all. Natalie. Victor's voice was nothing like I remembered. The arrogance was completely gone. He sounded panicked, breathless, almost shaking. I know things look bad right now, he said quickly. But we can fix this. I can fix this. It was just business, Natalie. You have to understand that. None of it was personal. I stayed silent, letting him fill the empty space with desperation. I can offer you anything, he continued. Money. A settlement. Glowing references. I can even talk to the board about reinstating you with a full apology. Whatever you want, just name it. But you have to call off the journalist. Please. I let him finish completely. Then I spoke for the first time. You destroyed my reputation, Victor. You forged my signature. You called me emotional in front of every executive in the company. You laughed while planning my termination. My voice didn't shake. You destroyed my life to save yourself. I hung up the phone and blocked his number permanently. The next morning, federal regulators officially opened a formal investigation into the company. Once the regulators arrived, the entire building started crumbling from the inside out. Employees who had stayed quiet for years suddenly began leaking documents to journalists every single day. New articles appeared every morning, each one revealing fresh layers of corruption. The HR director, a woman named Patricia Vance who had personally signed my termination papers, resigned within a week. 2 senior compliance officers followed her out the door. Then 3 middle managers from Victor's department announced they were stepping down for personal reasons. The young IT technician named Devin, the same one who had secretly backed up the deleted emails, came forward officially. He admitted under sworn questioning that he had received direct written orders from Victor to permanently erase specific email chains after my termination. He still had the original deletion request. The company's official statements became more and more confused. Every press release contradicted the one before it. Their lawyers scrambled to control a fire that was burning everywhere at once. Then Diane called me on a Friday afternoon with surprising news. Her voice carried something close to disbelief. Natalie, I just heard from a contact inside the federal investigation team. The CEO has retained his own private criminal attorney. There's a strong chance he may testify against Victor to save himself. The very top of the company was preparing to collapse. The corporate fraud hearing was held in a downtown federal building on a cold Tuesday morning. Reporters lined the marble hallway, cameras flashing as I walked in wearing a simple navy suit. Camden Ross gave me a small nod from the press section as I passed. Victor was already seated at the defendant's table when I entered the main hearing room. He looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders were hunched, and his usual confident posture was completely gone. He didn't look at me once. Not even when I sat down 10 feet away from him. Diane squeezed my hand under the table. You're ready, Natalie. When I was called forward to present evidence, I didn't speak first. I simply opened my laptop and connected it to the large display screen on the wall. Then, slowly and carefully, I presented the complete hidden email thread chronologically. Every warning I had ever sent Victor about the Halverson contract. Every risk report he had ignored. Every recommendation he had buried. The room fell completely silent except for the soft clicking of my keyboard. Some of the board members who had once dismissed me started writing furiously in their notebooks. Then I clicked to the very last email in the chain. The room held its breath. The final email loaded onto the giant screen. It was sent the day after my termination, from Victor directly to the IT department. Erase the entire Brooks thread before legal reviews the servers. Permanent deletion. Today. No questions. A loud collective gasp filled the hearing room. Several reporters in the back stood up. One board member actually whispered, "Oh my God." Victor immediately leaned over and whispered furiously to his attorney. He then stood up, his voice shaking with forced anger. "That email is fabricated. I never sent that message. This is an obvious frame job, Your Honor. I demand a forensic review of the metadata." Diane smiled calmly beside me. She had been waiting for exactly this moment. She gestured toward the back of the hearing room. The doors opened, and Devin, the young IT technician, walked in nervously holding a folder. He was sworn in within minutes. Devin spoke clearly under oath. He confirmed that Victor had sent the deletion email personally. He had received it directly. He had been ordered to act on it immediately. He had instead made backup copies because his conscience refused to let him follow the order. Two federal officers stood up from the side of the room. They approached Victor's table together. The federal officers escorted Victor out of the hearing room while cameras flashed wildly in the marble hallway outside. He didn't fight them. He didn't even look up. His face was drained completely of color, and his expensive suit suddenly looked too big for his shrinking frame. By that evening, the news had spread across every major outlet in the country. Television anchors called the situation one of the largest corporate fraud cover-ups of the year. Social media filled with shocked reactions and demands for justice. The company's stock crashed 43% overnight, wiping out billions in shareholder value. Then something almost funny started happening. The same executives who had abandoned me began issuing public apologies, one after another. Carefully worded statements. Practiced sympathy. Empty regrets about internal failures of leadership. It was far too late. The CEO resigned within 48 hours. The board announced an emergency restructuring. A federal task force took over the entire investigation. Pinegate Solutions was raided by financial crimes investigators on a Thursday morning, and Howard Langford was taken into custody by lunch. 2 days after the hearing, my phone buzzed with a polished email from a company called Westridge Strategic Partners, the rival firm that had been quietly watching everything. The subject line read, "An opportunity worth discussing." My heart skipped a careful beat. Westridge Strategic Partners was Victor's biggest professional rival, and a firm with a reputation for ethical leadership and serious results. Their CEO, a sharp woman named Adriana Cole, invited me to her office 2 days later for a private meeting. Her corner office overlooked the entire downtown skyline. She poured me coffee herself before sitting down across from me. Her smile was genuine. "Natalie, I've been watching this entire situation closely," Adriana said. "What you survived would have broken most people permanently. What you exposed required a level of strategic thinking I rarely see anymore. We want you here." She slid a contract across the polished wooden desk. It was an executive leadership role overseeing risk management and compliance for the entire company. The salary was nearly double what I had earned at my previous job. Full benefits. Stock options. A signing bonus to help me recover financially. This time, I didn't feel desperate. I didn't feel grateful for crumbs. I read every single clause carefully and negotiated 3 improvements without flinching once. Adriana smiled wider with each request. I signed the new contract on a bright Friday morning. Meanwhile, Victor faced multiple lawsuits, public disgrace, and possible federal prison time. Then, late one evening, my phone buzzed with a final unexpected message. It was from him. Victor's message was long, carefully written, and filled with desperation. He admitted everything privately, in his own words. He confessed that he had pressured the IT staff. He confessed that he had forged my digital signature himself. He confessed that he had laughed during the executive meeting where he chose me as the scapegoat. He claimed he had been under pressure from leadership. He said he had been trapped in an impossible situation. He begged me to speak on his behalf to investigators, to write a letter explaining that he had simply made human mistakes under stress. I read the message 3 times. Then I sat quietly at my new office window, watching the sun set over the city skyline. For a long moment, I felt something close to pity. He sounded broken in a way that nobody deserved. But then I remembered the laugh. The cold, casual laugh while planning my destruction. I typed my reply slowly and carefully. You buried the truth to save your career. The truth buried yours instead. I pressed send and closed my phone permanently. 6 months later, I was leading a thriving compliance division at Westridge. I mentored young professionals, exposed toxic workplace culture publicly through speaking events, and slept peacefully at night. They thought deleting the emails would erase the truth. They forgot the truth always leaves copies behind.